Thank you all. Good morning. It's an absolute pleasure being back in Sweden. I'd like to thank the Polar Music Prize for having me and my amazing, amazing sister Anna and the amazing Lisa, who you heard, and all the organizers, Marie and the entire team at the Polar Music Prize. My name is Ashish J Thakkar. I was a refugee. I'm a school dropout, an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, a to-be astronaut, and an author. Give you a quick background. My father's family left India in 1890, purely looking for trading opportunities, and sailed for 35 days and then traveled inwards and ended up in Uganda in 1890. Similarly, my mother's family left India in 1920 for similar reasons and ended up in Tanzania. My parents got married, they lived in Kenya, Rwanda, and then moved back to Uganda. In 1972, the unfortunate incident of Idi Amin took place. So my parents got kicked out, they left Uganda and moved to England. And unfortunately, they'd lost everything. So my father worked in the Ford factory, my mother worked in the Walker's Crisp factory. They built a little bit of capital, set up a small business, built some more capital, bought a home. But in '93, they were missing home. They were missing Africa. So we sold our home and business in England, and we moved to Rwanda. 9 months later, unfortunately, the genocide broke out. So my parents, my sister, and I lived through that genocide. We were refugees for 35 of the 100 days. We were at home for 9 days, and then we were in Hotel de Mille Collines, which is famously known as Hotel Rwanda. I'm sure many of you have seen the movie. We luckily came out alive, but unfortunately, everything we built as a family, we lost in 1994. So we moved back to Uganda, full circle back home. And that's when I was at an age where I could understand what's happening. I could see people avoiding my parents, keeping a distance, that in case my parents get too close, they may ask for a favor. So I felt like I wanted to and needed to do something about it. So I quit school at the age of 15, so I'm officially the most uneducated person in this room and the worst advocate for education as a result. But I quit school at the age of 15. I took a $5,000 loan and I set up a little IT business where I was flying to Dubai, filling my suitcase with motherboards, hard drives, processors, all computer parts, fly back to Uganda, sell Monday to Friday, get the cash, go back to Dubai, fill my suitcase. And I did that every weekend for 4 months. And then I went to my suppliers and I said, you know, I've met you 15 times, I love you, you love me, can I please get some credit? And they said, but you're from Africa. And I was like, yes, I'm from Africa. And they're like, yeah, forget it, you know, getting credit. And at that time, in 1996, brand Africa is not what it is today. So I got very frustrated, and as a result, I was advised that if you do want credit, set up a base in Dubai. So I did that, started getting credit, and then started extensively traveling across Sub-Saharan Africa to supply IT equipment. But what that did for me was it gave me a deep understanding that Africa is a continent, not a country. And every single country is so unique that every country has its own history and culture and politics and parliament. And that became the Mara model, how to be truly local but global at the same time. So to fast track to today, Mara is almost 22 years old. Through our various businesses, investments, and subsidiaries, we're in 25 African countries with about 14,000 employees. 9 years ago, we set up the Mara Foundation, which is focused on youth empowerment and women empowerment. And so basically, we support everybody but old men. And our core focus is that the answer to unemployment is not going to be foreign direct investment or large government intervention. It's going to be truly nurturing youth and women, small and medium enterprises in the true sense. So Mara Foundation's focus is the Mara Mentor Program, which is a mentorship platform, multilingual. It's available on every app store, which gives guidance, advice, hand-holding, support, and training. We've also launched a global entrepreneurship index, which ranks 85 countries around the world. It's a way to celebrate countries which are doing a good job. It's basically another way to name and shame the countries that are not. And that's hoping to push public policy in the right direction. With the amazing Anna, I also serve on the UN Foundation's Global Entrepreneurship Council, and I'm also the chair of the Presidential Youth Advisory Group for the Africa Development Bank. I'm a firm believer that if you're going to give back, mean it. Do it genuinely, do it authentically. And I think I'm so grateful, and I'm sure all of you are, that there's no better example than where we are today, which is what the Anderson family is doing with the Polar Music Prize, is genuinely giving back with an amazing intent and truly making a difference. And I think that whole angle of giving back and meaning it is so, so important. Today, in 2015, the United Nations passed the Sustainable Development Goals, which is the whole concept of 17 goals to ensure we leave no one behind by 2030. It's a very bold goal, but an achievable one. But it's not one that lies only in the public sector's hands. It's something that the private sector and all of us as citizens have a huge responsibility, and global citizens have a huge responsibility to play to actually ensure this happens. And even though these are 17 goals, they're so interconnected. For me, goal number 8, which is all about entrepreneurship and economic growth and quality jobs, is the relevant one. But it's very, very closely linked with goal number 9, which is all about innovation. If you do those two properly, you're going to solve goal 1 and 2, which is no hunger and no poverty. But you're also going to have a huge impact on goals 5 and 10, which is gender equality and reducing inequalities in general. And none of these are going to be possible without goal 17, which is about partnerships. So it's very, very interconnected, which I think makes a big difference. So it's not daunting that it's 17 goals. This is one, but if we're managing it properly. Integration is critical, and it's vital. We're living in an extremely, extremely fast-paced world where communication is everything happens so instantly. We see it happening very, very instantly. I think the key challenge is how do we integrate but still remain very local, but at the same time remain relevant globally? And without this, we're not going to succeed. We're not going to be able to truly be sustainable in the way we'd like to as countries. And this is not only for the developed world, this is also for the developing world. Integration is going to play an absolutely critical role. And I think it boils down to, again, that governments and multilaterals, the focus needs to be empowering youth and women. Because if we empower them in the right way, that's the only way we're going to create scalable and self-sustainable initiatives and solutions that will help us solve the world's problems and leave no one behind, like the aim is by 2030. If you do good, you will do well. Positivity attracts positivity, and I'm a huge believer in this, and as is my family and organization, that everything you do has that positive impact. But at the same time, when you come back to integration, this is where that whole mindset needs to also shift. Integration isn't about something that's policy-driven only or physical changes that need to happen. Integration, to me, is a huge mental issue also. Mentally, we need to start integrating and understanding what the world is about. I'll give you a few quick examples of my own continent, Africa, and how it's so misunderstood. Versus the perception versus reality. And this is why I wrote a book called The Lion Awakes, which is all about the perception versus reality and the way we're so misunderstood. Africa is 54 countries. It's 16% of the world's population. It's going to have a higher population than India and China by 2022. We have over 52 cities with over 1 million people in them. 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. Rwanda, which is the country I'm from, has been ranked recently as the 7th safest country in the world. We have 24-hour drone surveillance. 63% of our parliament are women, which is the highest in the world. But unfortunately, none of these things are being celebrated enough. I'll give you a perfect example. Ebola. Ebola was a serious issue. But the 3 countries that were affected by Ebola collectively made up 0.8% of the entire continent's GDP. Yet it was made out like the entire continent's on fire. And the ironic thing was that people canceled their Christmas holidays to Kenya and to South Africa and ended up going to London. You know what the amazing thing is? The Ebola epicenter was physically closer to London, than it was to Kenya or South Africa. This is how we're misunderstood. And I mean, this may be a little bit too out there, but this is the Polar Music Prize, so I'm allowed. But you know, one thing I'm still grappling with is when Kenya fought global terrorism and sent troops to Somalia, as they should. Unfortunately, one of the malls, the shopping malls in Nairobi, was attacked. And instantly, every country put a travel ban and a travel alert saying, do not go to Kenya, really unsafe. Paris had a similar incident at pretty much the same time. And the whole world flew to Paris and walked on the streets and stood in solidarity. So does that mean that lives are valued according to our GDPs? And this is where this whole narrative does need to shift. I mean, a recent example with Rwanda, and it's a controversial one, which I wrote an op-ed about, which, you know, last week, Rwanda announced that the Arsenal football team in England, they sponsored the sleeve of Arsenal. And it says, visit Rwanda. And by doing that, our tourism revenue is expected to go from $400 million a year to $800 million a year within 3 years. So it's a fantastic return on investment. It's a fantastic investment as a country to brand ourselves and market our tourism. But so many countries had a huge issue with this, saying, wait a second, we're giving you $8 for poverty eradication. How dare you sponsor a football t-shirt? But the money that's being sent for $8 is being spent towards the $8. I mean, the UK had a deficit on education, yet spent £9.2 billion on the Commonwealth Games. Those are two completely unrelated things. But my point being, Africa has become more about trade than aid. Times are changing, and this is where integration comes in, where we do need to evolve. We can't live yesterday. We have to live for tomorrow. And the only way that's going to be possible is not only do we policy-wise and physically try to integrate, but also mentally understand and see how countries are evolving and how we all can play a critical role in this to take things forward. And music is the beautiful and perfect example, which is why, again, the relevance of Polar Music Prize. And music is the leading example and the perfect relevance of how this integration is taking place. It's breaking barriers. The people you're going to be seeing over the next few days just lives up to that, even later on today, just lives exactly that. And this is what feels so special, that there is that hope. We are heading in the right direction, but there's always constant room for improvement, which I'm confident, as a true optimist, that we will get there, step by step. I think on an overall basis, we have to shift the narrative. We have to change the narrative. And this comes in so many different forms, but one big element for me personally is that we need to change what success even means. We've kind of got carried away, and especially youth on our continent and generally young entrepreneurs globally, is that youth is, success is equals to wealth. But we need to redefine this to say success should be equals to the number of lives that are being impacted. And again, it boils down to, if you do good, you will do well. Too many people promise to do well after doing good, but never get round to it, which is why it's important to keep it this way around, which is do good and you will do well. Positivity attracts positivity. I'm extremely lucky. I have a spiritual leader whose name is Morari Bapu, and his teaching is truth, love, and compassion. 3 very, very simple words for you personally and professionally. And this obviously means a big deal to me because I've tattooed it here. But it's just keeping that in mind. It just keeps you on that right mindset, that this is a journey. It's not a destination. It's important that we constantly think bigger than we've ever thought before. We dream, but we make things happen on a step-by-step basis. Not having an ego and not trying to live in yesterday is important. Getting into this rat race is not the right thing because, even if you win, you're still a rat. So it's important how we pull ourselves back, stay grounded, but understand the reality of integration today is not only a physical thing, it's really, really a mental thing too. And how we take advantage of this is key. We're seeing this already, that the youth are not the leaders of tomorrow, they're the leaders of today. And they are taking those seats at the table, which is really, really exciting to see. But I think we collectively are so lucky. We're so lucky to be alive at this time when things like the SDGs are in motion. There's so much evolution. There's so much transformation happening around the world. It's really exciting. It's in our hands. As I like to say, it's ours to mess up. But we have a huge responsibility and role. And I believe collectively, putting our heads together with the right level of physical and mental integration, we can really make a difference. Thank you so much, and God bless you.